Production support for Hot and Cold is brought to you by American Solar Technics, manufacturers of components for wood burning and solar heating systems.
Hey, I'm Tom Gozzi. Welcome to Hot and Cold. Here we are. It's been week number 2 of the new season, and we're on staging. The ocean's out there. Does it get any better than that? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Here we are, we're on staging. I built some staging. I had pipe staging here originally, remember the pipe staging? But I built staging because I like to build things, you know? And what's more fun than building staging? And you get 16-foot long 2x4s. These are pressure treated 2x4s, which means I will never have them rot on me. And I guess it's worth showing just because it's kind of fun. And if you're going to need staging for a long time, you can build your own staging and be pretty darn secure. What we have is I have a piece of 2x4. They're scraps basically for making the wall panels. And I've screwed that in either to studs or just to the sheathing. I use more fasteners than the sheathing, but I do use screws. And then we have a 3-foot long piece of 2x6 nailed into the side here and nailed into the side of the post. And then instead of using staging planks, I have 3 2x3s underneath here, and this of course is just OSB scraps I had kicking around, and it's fairly solid. I have some of these are spanning about 8 feet. They shouldn't span 8 feet. That one the cameraman is on is a little spongy, as you see me up and down. But it is safe. There should be a piece of wood across the back here so you don't go flying off. I haven't put that on yet. I do have it. We have staging on the back now, and I'm just basically staging the front and the back so we can get the final run of foam up on these edges, and then we will attack the roof. And I've already attacked the roof a little bit. There is or was here, this is, literally I'm attacking the roof. Don't I love old asphalt shingles? They're just so solid. We have a solid sheathing board here. We have a ring beam down here. This is that ring beam that's underneath the roof panel. You can see very clearly now. It's some vermiculite that was in this cavity. Another ring beam up above. We've got these little posts that are trees. You can get a very nice look now at the fact that it is a tree with, all wood is trees, by the way, in case you didn't know that. But this is literally a tree with the bark on it like we've seen in many other places, and you can see the powder post beetle activity that was going on where the bark was left on here. And these are mortised in, fortunately, but they're not real solid. As I go along here, most of them, you know, are kind of rattly. That isn't, but that's a 2x4. It makes me wonder what the heck is holding up the roof. Excuse me. I think this interior wall is, which has really 1x boards with the plaster lath here, and that is solid, and I think as a system it works fairly well. I think what we're going to do, and I'm going to come to a firm decision in the next couple days here. We've got sheathing up to right down here where this piece of wood is, and that's sort of my benchmark for where I keep everything straight. As I go up, I have sheathing that's going across in rows, and that is the top of this, and then I put my decking on top. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to put sheathing on here up against this, which is the outside surface, and then we're going to put some studs in on the back side of the sheathing on top of the foam, and we're going to header it off up here. All this will come off, and we're going to header it off in the same plane as the roof and tie it back to here a little bit. And then I think we're going to spray foam in and consolidate this, because this is the load carrying wall, and it is a little dicey in my book. So I think it'd be a good way to beef it up. There is a board here, and I've taken the one out here, but there's another board here that is underneath, and it's not supported by anything. It just is kind of hanging out there. And so I will be removing that, and that'll give us a clearer shot for when we do the spray foam thing. There's only so much to do in a given, so many hours in a given day, but we're going to cut all this back. They do come apart easy anyway. And then we'll go up and strip the roof, but that's whole other episodes. You can see from up here now a nice view of the post that we discovered that was cut off, and how massive it really is. And you can see here, if I remove some of the foam, here's one of the pegs for the mortise, and you can see some powder post activity that was here. It seems to have been a long, long time ago, hundreds of years ago maybe. But anyway, that was actually a structural entity of the house at one time. And it sort of is again now. Why don't we go down, and there's more staging. I've been staging like we're going to put a show on up here. So let's go look at some more staging on the other side of the house. Whole other level of activity back there. Should we take a break? No? Let's just go look at staging then. What am I talking about a break for? So this is the back of the house. I built some staging back here too. I'm not completely finished, so if I go too far, here's my back support. it ended here. I got to pick up a couple of 2x3s for the decking. And it just makes it so much easier. I hate working off ladders, but to be able to get access to everything is so much simpler when you have staging like this. Why don't we get the camera right up here, because he doesn't like to zoom, and he wants to play up. This is like a fort now. I mean, you know, this is the adult male counterpart of having your fort. So come on up. We got Nunzio, the cameraman, up here, because he likes high places too. And I'm not, like I say, I'm not done, but it's kind of fun to be up this high because we can get in close and look at stuff instead of worrying about hanging off a ladder. And the different issue we had in the back, and we have on both sides, is these ring beams that carry the second floor, just because they're beams, have rolled one way or the other over the course of time. They were not moved when we lifted up the wall, and they had already moved when before we had lifted the wall up. So the orientation, this one leaning in this way a little bit, the other one leaning in that way a little bit, both of them actually leaning in towards the center of the house, was something that happened a while ago, and I don't know if it's from drying or twisting or from what was underneath not being real secure, but it is what it is. We just need to make everything square on the outside when we're done. And right in the middle of this wall, we also had a big post as well, like we did in the front side. This one was a little bit more chopped up here, and we had to deal with it to make sure it was supported. It made me very nervous because I didn't know we had one in the front. When we did this back one, I had mental pictures of things collapsing, but that didn't happen. We will be tying everything. Everything is screwed in from this top plate into the bottom of these beams, but we will also have straps on each one because these have some shear strength, in that they can't pull apart the way a fastener going in through, screwing up from here into here or screwing down, could conceivably pull apart in the right circumstances. With straps on it, it's a lot harder to do, especially when there's sheathing over it. You can see also, you remember the whole building was kind of leaning back like this? Well, you noticed in the front that we had to fill in the wall with a lot of foam to make everything line up properly. On the back side, we didn't have to do that because the building was already moving out this way, so we're right pretty much flush here. So we will not have the same thickness of foam covering the outside of the building that we had on the front. Does that make sense? I think it does. I'm getting confused. I don't know about you. So what we need to do is just put a couple more posts in here, get our deck continued over so we can continue to safely remove the siding and the sheathing boards and clean out the wall cavities, and then we'll probably put some spray foam in here too. The thing about spray foam is that when you spray it, it sticks to everything. And when you fill a cavity like this, we're really going to consolidate and bond everything together, and that's very important, especially where we have this spindly post affair. So that will be very nice when we get it done. But we are going to take a break now because we need to get down off the staging and look at stuff we did where we had other staging on the other side that I took down already because the staging went down because that project got done. You haven't seen it yet, and you have to wait. Okay, I just want to show you one last thing about staging before we let the whole concept go. And that is that you just don't put sticks of wood up in the air and cross pieces and decking on it. You have to triangulate it. And you can see here we have crosses all the way on in between each of these posts. And that makes this extremely rugged. If this wasn't here, the whole thing would be very floppy. With the cross bracing, it makes it very strong. Very important to keep it safe and secure. And you have to stop and think. If you haven't done this before, you probably don't want to do it. But if you look at staging and analyze how things are put together, there's always cross bracing. So a little bit of physics there. And if you play with this with your kids' rector sets or whatever, I'm trying to think of those little sticks that you put together like straws. When you triangulate, you'll see how much more rugged it is. Or if you have a screwdriver, electric drill, just triangulate some stuff and you'll see what I'm talking about. Or you might just think I make no sense. But I think I occasionally do. There's one wall. Now you've seen the front, you've seen the back. We got the staging all set up. But there's one wall the staging was on. We need to go look at it because it's finished. Almost. Okay, so this wall is pretty much done. Not completely, but it's done enough that I could take the staging down. And you can see one of the final things, well, a couple things. From down as close to the ground as we are, up 4 feet, where the wood structure is, I've got pressure treated plywood. We've talked about this last year. From here up, we've used OSB to be economical. Down here, we run the risk of having some wetting from splashback or whatever. Highly unlikely it's going to get wet, but it isn't that expensive that it isn't worth putting it in place, so it's here. The other thing, we've got vinyl windows, and you'll see that the vinyl windows will start to look very traditional by the time we're done with the project. I'm looking forward to this because a lot of people think vinyl windows could be pretty ugly. I think we're going to hopefully prove the case that it has to be done right and it can look good. But what we've done, you see all this black stuff around the penetrations. You remember when we put the doors in last season, we used ice and water shield all the way around, and it goes all the way in, because this is any place stuff comes together. Now here we're going to have trim, and then we're going to have clapboards coming up to the trim. That's going to be a joint where stuff comes together, and that's where the water's going to leak. We're going to put it on the corner. We've put it over here where the new meter is going to be for the electrical, because we want to have ice and water shield. When you penetrate it, it's sticky. It has it's an asphalt-based material, and it's real sticky. So a nail or a screw going through it, it will stick to it, and it will become relatively watertight. Over this, we're going to put tar paper, 30-pound roofing felt. You could use house wrap, Tyvek Type R, but good old-fashioned black tar paper stands up as well, if not better, in the long run. That's what we're going to use. And it'll cover everything before we start to put trim on. And it'll probably start putting it on fairly soon just to protect, especially the OSB. I'm not too worried about the plywood. But you can see upstairs, those were old, or I didn't put those vinyl windows in. They were here, and they were mounted in old frames that were pretty funky. So I took the old frames out. I built new frames, which we'll show you because we still have another end to do. We'll show you how those all go together. And so that's all tied in now and is quite solid. something else happened just today. Look at this. Oh, I love this thing. This is one of my favorite things. It's electric power, boys and girls. Unfortunately, if you look up there, it ain't hooked up yet. I have been doing this project for well over a month with no electricity, and I am sick of it. I carry batteries in a plastic bag back and forth and recharge them. The electrician came today, set the meter trim, and it's ready to go. It's all tied in inside to the fuse box, the circuit breaker box, and he did something really cool. I don't think we're telling any tales out of school. Instead of having the wire go underneath and out, he went right out the back, and so we don't have exposed wire there. That was very thoughtful. Good design. I'm glad he did that. So, whoop, and he drew a happy face as well. So, the other thing is, if you ever are doing your own meter trim, I contemplated doing it, but I was much more happy to defer putting big stout wire like this and having an electrician do it rather than me. But the code now requires you have a ground lead, which is here, that goes to the panel, and there are 2 ground rods. They've secreted them well in the soil, but there are 2 ground rods here, just in case one should fail, you've got a backup. So that's all ready to go. All we need now is central main power to come in and hook up to the transformer over there, and I will be able to plug in my boom box and dance to the tunes. I think let's take a quick peek inside, see what's going on in there, see if we got enough light. Well, through the magic of television, we've done something pretty cool. We've waited till we've gotten the meter hooked up, and I wanted to show you, take some time to show you what we had done prior to and subsequent to the fact we have electric power again. We mounted the panel inside here on the interior wall. We're right outside where the meter is. This is the conduit that is going out to the meter trim, and because we're on the floor and we're up in the air a bit, it actually comes in here and goes up into the bottom of the box. I think the way I'm going to set this up, because the electric hookup, the electric panel was upstairs originally, I like the idea of keeping it upstairs because it's convenient. So we're going to box this in, and I think what we'll do is actually bump the wall out here. So this is a corner, and then there'll just be a door here, and that gives us the luxury also of having access up to there and down to there if we want to run extra wires, because we'll have a wall cavity that'll stick out the width of maybe a 2x6, 5-6 inches. So that will be very convenient for us. Thus far we have 5 circuits here, 5 20-amp circuits. We have the breakers. And what I've done is, obviously they're not labeled yet because there's nothing to stick the label onto, but you can probably, well, you can't really see it because I've written over the print on the cable, but on the wire, the Romex cable that comes in is labeled outside here. So I know, and I labeled it before I even hooked it up because it had been sitting here for a little while. So I know what everything is, and if the labels get messed up or something gets screwed up, I can take the cover off and I can trace an individual wire and know exactly what I'm dealing with. Now, I get paranoid. For the years I've done it and the early shows I've done on TV, I've shown, my getting into electrical panel boxes and doing wiring. And the older I get, the more paranoid I get about somebody who shouldn't really be in here being in here. So it was with fear and trepidation that I am doing this. I just want to mention, if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't understand electricity, you shouldn't be in this box. You pay an electrician, it doesn't cost you a lot of money. I know what I'm doing, and I still get nervous because you have to treat this with a lot of respect. You put your hand in there, you're gonna die. It's that simple. I have never hooked up the meter trim, which is the stout wires here, and I was almost going to do it, and I said, I'm going to call an electrician. He knows what he's doing. He's done it 100 times. I have not. And it's big wire. It's 240 volts at 100 amps. That's 24,000 watts of electric power that will melt through anything. It will kill anybody and do all wonderful, horrible things. Let's leave somebody who knows what they're doing to do the hookup, and I did, and it was several $100s, well worth it. The smaller wiring I can deal with. I've done that 100 times. But if you don't know what you're doing, stay out of here. Quick thumbnail sketch. If you want to get an idea of what is going on inside the box, there are 3 wires that come in here. 2 blacks and an unshielded one. The unshielded one is a ground, and I can touch that because that's a ground. These 2 wires I don't even touch with the insulation on them because those are the power wires, and they come up in and they're both hot wires. So if you go from that wire to ground is 120 volts, that wire to ground is 120 volts. You go to the 2 in between these 2 wires, you get 240 volts. We have a main breaker here, and if I flip that off, the lights will go out and the cameraman will freak. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Put the power back on right away. And that kills all the power to the panel. At this point, where I have very little hooked up in here, it is very simple for me just to flip the main breaker, do my little circuit, my individual circuit wiring, and know that if I inadvertently have a screwdriver and I hit the wrong thing and my finger's on the bare part of the screwdriver, I'm not going to lift myself. I still, even if the main breaker's off, I am very paranoid about what I stick inside this box. Whenever I'm moving a wire to put it into a ground lug or something, I always use insulated needle nose pliers to hold the wire and move it in. I don't like to use even my bare fingers. I'm just a little paranoid about it, and I think paranoia when it comes to electricity is a good thing. The 2 hot leads come in and they go down either side here. We have what they call bus bars, which are these things. The circuit breaker connects to the bus bar and is basically a fuse, and then the wire goes out. So this is the intermediary between the bus bar and the fuse, and you can see there's one side that goes to one side of the hot and the other side goes to the other side of the hot, and we go down, and in between here and the ground we get 120 volts. When you take a piece of Romex cable, there are 3 wires on the inside, and I don't have my knife with me. Isn't that stupid? I'm doing a TV show, but I could do this real quick with the wire cutters. If we strip back the insulation, you can see there are 2 wires in here. There is a black wire, actually there's 3 wires, 2 insulated wires, a black wire and a white wire and an unshielded wire. This is the ground, the one that has no insulation, much the way it is here. This is the neutral, which is also grounded, but it is insulated. And then there is the hot lead, which is black. And in this case, in most household wiring, the hot lead is black. Sometimes it's red, but for most cases, black leads are going to be hot. So if you touch the black lead and you are grounded in some way, you are connected to ground, which is a water pipe, is something that is a pathway that will conduct electricity to ground. You can conceivably touch that hot lead and not get lifted, but if you have any pathway to any kind of ground and your feet are sweaty and you're standing on the floor and it's maybe a little humid out or something, it's very likely you're going to lift yourself. If you touch the hot lead and the chassis here, any of these ungrounded leads, you will get electrocuted and probably die, if not hurt a lot. So you don't mess with this. There are 2 what we call bus bars on either side of the panel. On one side here, all the neutrals go. See, all the neutrals are the whites. On the other side here, all the grounds go. And you can see here there are 2 ground leads that actually go to the soil ground outside. This is the ground here that goes to the power company, and these are all tied together. And you see this connector here, this piece of bus bar? It goes from here, the ground side, across the top to the neutral side. So those are tied together. So the ground and the neutral are tied together, and that's the way it should be. Am I making any sense? Yes? Okay. You don't go in here. If you don't know what you're doing, stay away. Have somebody come in and do it. It doesn't cost a lot of money to have an electrician come in and run an individual circuit for you. If you have an older house and you have outlets like this here, and you only have 2, you don't have that ground lug, you only have these 2 connections, you may want to consider having some rewiring done and getting a grounded socket, because many things are much safer when that ground is present, because that sort of would become a conduit for the device is grounded, and if there's a short in there, it's much less likely you become the interface in between the hot side and the ground. Anyway, what else can I show you? Do we still have time? Okay. We had to recess the boxes into the foam a little bit to get the right amount of exposure for sheetrock. When you put an electrical box in, it's got to stick out by, because it's got to go, the sheetrock will go in around it. So this edge here is flush with the outside of the sheetrock, and you can see we've got about 3/8 of an inch there. And there's a little thing here on the side. That's a little stop for 3/8 sheetrock. So that gives me the opportunity to not have to measure everything. So what I have measured is a couple of things. I have measured up the height here. I believe the bottom of the box has to be 16 inches off the floor. I've made it 18 inches just because that's an easier number for me to remember. We're in from either edge of the corner about 2 feet here, should be within 3 feet, and then once you get away from the corner, you go every 6 feet. Now we've got one here, then we jump around this window, and we have another one over here. I haven't put any directly under the window because there was trim underneath the window like panels, so I've avoided putting any outlets underneath any of the first floor windows because we had all these panels, and I didn't want to disrupt that by having an electric outlet in the middle. So I've put a lot of outlets in here just because I don't like to run wires too far, and especially where we don't have them underneath the windows. There's more outlets than there should be. Outlets are cheap though. If you're doing this yourself, it's very easy to do. Anyway, that's about it for this week. There's nothing like having electric power. I don't like working with batteries. I do, but after a while, if you can't recharge them when they run down, it gets to be a nuisance. I'm going to recharge that one. We'll see you next week. Give us a call if you have any questions on the radio. You'll see we're at the end of the show. And be safe and stay out of the electrical box unless you really, really know what you're doing.
Production support for Hot and Cold is brought to you by American Solar Technics, manufacturers of components for wood burning and solar heating systems.